first started resonating with Islam back when I read. Have you read the Malcolm X autobiography?
Yeah, of course.
That was the first, and I'm starting to realize why I resonated with it so much then, because I've always known that wokeness wanted me to be a bad person for reasons that I didn't have control over, or reasons that were, they insisted that there was something wrong or that I was a bad person. And then I read that book, and it really seems like the antidote to a lot of problems in the West.
So hello everyone, once again from the Kingdom of Cambodia. Now today I want to talk about why Manosphere grifters are suddenly all converting to Islam. So of course you guys will be aware that Andrew Tate claims he's converted to Islam, and then recently Sneako posted a picture of himself saying Allahu Akbar on Twitter, saying, you know, he's also converted to Islam. And although I haven't really covered these people much in videos, and I never covered this Sneako guy, I find this interesting because I made a video about Jordan Peterson and like his message to Muslims. And in that video, I spoke about Jordan Peterson having a lot of Muslim fans, which seems so weird. He has a lot of appeal with people who like really hate Muslims because he's such a Western chauvinist. And I was wondering why Jordan Peterson had these fans, and it's because he has anti-woke social views, and that appeals to more conservative Muslims. So what I wanted to do today is talk about Sneako and Andrew Tate, talk about their appeal to Muslims, and really talk about why they are saying they've converted to Islam, because I find it really interesting that these people clearly aren't converting to Islam. They don't care about Islam. But what is so weird is they are taking like a very stereotypical view of Islam, which used to be seen as a bad thing. They talk about like the violence in Islam. They talk about Islam defending their faith through violence, but they don't say that's a bad thing. They say that is a good thing, especially Andrew Tate. And it feels like the 2020s are like some bizarro world where we have like right-wing conservative people like Andrew Tate and Sneako, who historically in the West in the last 20 years have hated Muslims. Now they're converting to Islam. At the same time, like patriotic American conservative Republicans are now like pro-Russia as well. It feels like very, very weird, but we're going to talk about all of these things today. Also, before we go any further, please like the video, follow me on social media at the Kavernacle on Twitter. Instagram is a big one for me. It's where I'm posting about all my travels around Southeast Asia. That is all archived in the highlight reels on my actual profile page itself. Also, I've been posting travel content on my Patreon page, just filmed the video about Thailand with my girlfriend, so that should be going up soon. And I want to build up as many $1 to $3 patrons as possible, and other benefits include getting access to the Discord server and getting access to my Nintendo Switch friend code. Also, check out my second channel and check out the subreddit. All of the links are in the description. So before we talk about Sneako and Andrew Tate, I thought I'd give my views on Islam and religion in general. So this channel kind of started off as like a progressive atheist channel where I would like debunk religion or respond to religious arguments. But then I just really shifted to more left-wing politics because fundamentally my worldview kind of shifted with me seeing capitalism as the root of all our problems, and that replaced me seeing religion as the root of many problems today. And that really plays into the way I view Islam. And this is just a fact. All Abrahamic religions are fundamentally homophobic. They fundamentally are pro-patriarchy. Fundamentally, they push a lot of really, really conservative views. So it's no wonder they've been the root cause of so many issues throughout world history. But I'm also someone who absolutely loves religious history. Like, I've read so many books about the history of Islam, the history of Christianity. I find it so fascinating. But because I find it so fascinating, it's also pretty laughable when you read about how Christianity and Islam have just been used to attain political power from various different groups, whether that be Turkic groups, Berber groups, Arab groups, the Fatimids, the Abbasids, all these different empires. I find it interesting, but also proves to me like religion is just a tool for control. Before we even get into the arguments about how ridiculous religion is in general and how you can really just poke holes in any religious views. I was raised Catholic in like an immigrant community in London. It was like progressive Catholic. I don't think it was really that bad, but it's still pretty ridiculous and stupid. And one thing I will admit, and this is why I think I can speak with some authority on it, I used to buy into that Islam is worse than Christianity, but because I was more into atheism and listened to people like Sam Harris, Hitchens, Dawkins, this was about when I was like 18, 19, 20, and I think I really broke out that way of thinking about 2014 because I realized that these people were in essence racializing Muslims, and there's like a stereotypical view of a Muslim which they would paint every single Muslim with. I just felt uncomfortable at how the new atheist movement was just becoming the straight out racist Western chauvinist. And like I said, because I switched to anti-capitalism stuff, you realize how capitalism and the world status quo really allows like fundamentalist religion to flourish. And that's why Islam has a stereotype for being more conservative or more violent, because where people believe in Islam the most are often some of the poorest places in the world. Even just having a poor country with a lack of access to education, the internet and things like that, that will make communities more conservative. But then, of course, a lot of these countries have dictators or autocratic governments propped up by the West for capitalism. Saudi Arabia is a great example in that front, a country that spreads religious fundamentalism around the world, propped up by all the Western powers because historically it's access to oil. But then even in countries that are against Islamicism, like Egypt, for example, actually the current president overthrew an elected government, which was from like the Muslim Brotherhood, because he doesn't like Islamists. But even in that context, because someone like Sisi is this like really corrupt president who keeps Egypt ignorant and misinformed and keeps it poor, it still allows religious fundamentalism and conservatism to flourish, because also Egypt doesn't have freedom of speech. So laws against LGBT people or laws empowering women, because it is in essence a dictatorship. Some Arab North African countries are better, Tunisia, Morocco, but they aren't perfect either. I feel a lot of this is to do with their governments and their material needs not being met, but that's because they're often at different stages of development to the West. But even these different countries have different forms of Islam. They're conservative in their own ways. You know, I've been to Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam, and when you see Muslims, especially in Thailand, it doesn't feel as conservative as somewhere like Saudi Arabia, for example, like Thai Muslim communities not necessarily being wealthy. So all of that stuff really plays into it. But in America, for example, Muslims generally are more progressive than hardcore Christians there. And I think that's telling, because it shows you when you grow up in a certain society that has like freedom of speech, access to the internet, and better economic conditions, I feel like fundamentalist religion thrives less, especially when you're in the minority, like Muslims are in the US. And having known like Western Muslims, especially younger generations, have been far more progressive in my experience. I know that's not universal, and it's normally like their immigrant parents and grandparents who are the more conservative ones, but they also had like terrible schooling, grew up in poor countries, where they have grown up in richer countries, had a more like secular education, and they are more tolerant as a result, despite the fact that they are still Muslims. So painting Islam as fundamentally like conservative, hateful, violent and backward, in my opinion, is like a more Orientalist view of Islam in general. You're painting all Muslims with one brush, when if you actually have gone to various different places that are Muslims, if you study different Muslim countries, Muslim history, and just see how different Muslim communities are different in their beliefs, you will know, like many religions, like Christianity as well, like Joseph Kony is no different from like a fundamentalist Islamic insurgent. It's all about the conditions of a country, which makes you either a fundamentalist religious person, a moderate religious person, or like a secular liberal religious person. It's not necessarily, especially when we talk about like Abrahamic religions like Judaism, Islam and Christianity, it's not because one or the other of these religions is fundamentally more hateful, while at the same time I will recognize there are offshoots of each of these religions which are more fanatical, more hateful. And sometimes with religious elites in America and Saudi Arabia, you don't need to be poor or poorly educated to believe this stuff. But often these elites are preaching to people who are more vulnerable, who are in worse economic conditions, who do exploit these more poor conservative communities. But like I touched on there is a view of Islam in the West which is about them being more violent, more defensive. They will protect their communities. They won't turn against each other. And it's normally seen as like quite a negative view to have. Like I said, an Orientalist view, often Islamophobic view. But what's so weird about Andrew Tate and Sneako, it's kind of seen as a positive thing. So let's start with Sneako first, because I want to talk more about Andrew Tate because there's been more work done on how he's influenced Muslim people. So like I said, this Sneako tweet was going viral with that fresh and fit guy. So I tried to research this more, and it was actually kind of hard to find information, but I did find a podcast on something called TK Talks, where that fresh and fit guy was there too with Sneako and a bunch of other people, and they're talking about like Islam, because that fresh and fit guy, he is a Muslim, but Sneako is converting to Islam. I think this is in Dubai, And Sneako is talking about like he wants to actually move to Dubai with these other people. So let's have a quick listen to this before listening to why Sneako is attracted to Islam.
I've also just, for selfish reasons, wanted to come here for a long time. It seems like all roads end up leading here. This is the future place to really be. Sure. It's not the only reason. I've actually been considering moving here a lot since I came here. It's a great place, and I like the respect that people have for their culture and their religion and the people around. I first started resonating with Islam back when I read. Have you read the Malcolm X autobiography?
Yeah, of course.
That was and I'm starting to realize why I resonated with it so much then, because I've always known that wokeness wanted me to be a bad person for reasons that I didn't have control over, or reasons that were they insisted that there was something wrong or that I was a bad person. And then I read that book, and it really seems like the antidote to a lot of problems in the West. Like I said, I have mental health issues. They said I have disabilities. You're a bad person because you don't want to conform to this.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering now how much you think of it is selfish, because Islam is going to take over. It's going to infiltrate the West even more. A lot of people are going to find Islam and become Muslims. And I'm thinking now, my struggle with it is the faith and the choice, because strategically, it makes the most sense. The community is strong. Muslims always defend each other. And you want to be part of a call. You want to be part of something that's going to win. You want to have that support group behind you. So is it really, am I choosing this religion for faith reasons purely? Because I want to feel that every time I pray that this is something I believe in. I want to feel God's, I want to be able to thank him and really believe in that, or like sometimes I think, like when I'm praying, like am I just full of am I just full of it? Am I just doing this because it's strategic, because I want to be on the winning team?
Yeah, that's why I'm taking my time.
The only thing he might be being honest about is strategically it might be smart to become like a Muslim to be part of the winning team. But I even think there it speaks to like this more Orientalist view of Islam, because he's saying like, yeah, Muslims, don't fight. Muslims always stand up for each other. Like, dude, do you know anything about the history of Islam? Like, different Islamic groups have literally been fighting against each other, like, 30 years after Muhammad died. Quickly, the massive empire that Muhammad started literally just descended into, like, massive civil wars, competing caliphates. And central to some of that disagreement was they fundamentally disagreed about the nature of this religion. This still goes on to this day in various different parts of the world, because he's seeing Islam as like a monolith. Like Islam, they all stand up for each other. Doesn't matter where you're from, we're all one. Despite the fact there are even like two major differences of opinion in Islam, which inform like geopolitics, like Iran versus Saudi Arabia. So that's a lie. But also it's funny, he read Malcolm X's autobiography and took away from it, you should be against woke people. Like, does this guy know where the word woke came from? Woke came from the black community in the first place. Malcolm X, like I'd say a lot of his views right now are pretty woke, especially about African Americans' place in American society. I mean, you couldn't literally teach that to kids in Florida. So it's funny, what he takes away from Malcolm X is, oh yeah, wokeness bad. So I'm going to become a Muslim because of Malcolm X. I find that really funny. That a lot of these people see Islam as a fundamental rejection of left-wing politics, of wokeness, of liberalism. And for a lot of Muslims, that's true, because a lot of Muslims do believe in this more conservative social ideology, not helped by growing up in poor countries or dictatorships and stuff like that. But it wouldn't be wrong to say that lots of Muslim people do agree with more social conservatism, more so than Western Christians, who although often do have backwards views, it really isn't as socially conservative, including in mainstream churches like the Church of England and their views towards like same-sex relationships. I don't think Pope Francis is a great guy, but even stuff he said is stuff that you wouldn't really hear in like major Muslim communities in like North Africa, Asia, or the Gulf regions. Yes, that makes sense to some extent, but I just find it weird he's using Malcolm X as his like entry point into anti-wokeness, because fundamentally, I don't think this guy knows much about Islam. I don't think he's read the Quran. I don't think, he's done much. So these guys view Islam as this monolith and as like a grifting opportunity, because in their view, all Muslims hate women, all Muslims hate feminism, all Muslims hate liberals, all Muslims hate Christians. So if I become a Muslim, I'm going to have a bigger audience to appeal to. And like Sneako was saying, it'd be good to be on the winning side. So I'm going to join, even though the only honest thing he said is that he's questioning, is he actually doing this because he believes in God or he wants to be in the winning group? I think Sneako's conversion is pretty funny, but Andrew Tate also supposedly converted to Islam as well. And there was a podcast he did with this guy called Zuby, where he talks about why he likes Islam and why Islam must be the only true religion compared to something like Christianity.
If you have a belief system that nobody will fight to defend, then you don't have beliefs. Just like feminism. If nobody fights to defend it, it goes away. Like Christianity, if nobody stands up for the rules, it goes away. There is one religion on the planet today in which people stand up for the rules, they stick by the rules, they refuse to be mocked, and they refuse to completely throw away their values and belief systems under the guise of tolerance. Because they don't want to be tolerant of everything. They said, no, we're not tolerant of everything, because when you're tolerant of everything, you have no morality. That's what we talked about earlier. Baseline morality means there's some things you're intolerant of, because you're a moral person. So to be moral, you have to be intolerant to a degree. There's one religion on the planet, and that's Islam. So if I'm gonna worship God, and I'm gonna worship God in a way which is true to my own personal beliefs, also what I understand about the world, what I understand about strength, what I understand about defending ideals, then there's only one religion on earth I can respect. I can't respect Christians anymore. They set Notre Dame on fire. Imagine that was the other way around. Like, think about it for a second. I say this all the time. They're mocking your God in front of your face, and Christians don't say a word. They don't say a word. If your interpretation of God and the world was right, I don't believe God would allow you to sit there and be such a coward. That's what I don't believe. I don't think that God would allow you to do that. I think he'd say, no, you need to defend our ideals because our ideals are good for humanity, and Christians fail to defend them. So if they fail to defend them, they do not exist. There's only one religion left on the planet. Wow, that's Islam.
Oh, look, do I think Andrew Tate sincerely has converted to Islam? Like, no, I don't. But at the same time, his justification is interesting. It's that, well, if Islam is the religion that shows you, I don't know, the words of the one true God, then you should defend it violently. Like, what does he want people to do in response to Notre Dame burning down? Like holy war or something? And that's why I find this language so interesting, because this is the language that they demonize Muslims with. Muslims are so sensitive. They can't accept satire of Muhammad. They can't accept all of these things. And they're just so instinctively violent against it. But Andrew Tate is spinning this around saying, yeah, this stereotype of Muslim people, that's a good thing. They should be doing all these things. And like, isn't this guy basically justifying like everything Islamic insurgents do? Because they do all this stuff because they feel like their religion is being attacked. So think about every terrible like act of violence Islamic insurgents have done throughout like recent history. You can basically justify it through this way of thinking because that means their God is real, because you'll defend them. While us Christians or people who were raised Christians, we don't care. We won't defend our God. We won't violently attack people because they do something against our religion. But again, aren't we all going to be judged on the final day? So why would we have to do this in the first place? Surely everyone who does those things is going to hell. We're going to heaven for being good people. But again, it's a very, very stereotypical view of Muslims, which has been used to discriminate against Muslims, to demonize Muslims and drum up Islamophobia. But Andrew Tate is telling his millions of followers, but that's an actual good thing. And that's why Islam is the one true religion. But with both these people, it's just the grift. And because they view Islam in a certain way, they feel their ideas will be more accepted with Muslim fans, and they can grow it throughout the Muslim world. Let's move to Dubai and start spreading all these messages to Muslim people about how much we hate woke people and feminism and stuff like that. And that's a way to preserve our audience, as our more extreme views, especially on women, get increasingly demonized by people in Western countries, not just liberals. But like I was trying to outline near the start, there is a grain of truth to the sense that a lot of Muslim people are more socially conservative for a variety of reasons that I feel like are outside their control, rather than all Muslims are bad people and believe these things because they're bad people. But interestingly, I went on the Islam subreddit and they posted about Andrew Tate reverts to Islam, and you do get like a lot of posts that are saying this is a good thing. So the top voted post, I hope he is sincere. Yes, the thing with the red pill people and Andrew Tate is that they have a more or less twisted mindset about women. Maybe Andrew changed his views, but his audience still believes in many haram things, especially with girls. So they're not talking about his misogynistic views. They're talking more about his like sex life and stuff like that. Allah has guided the former undisputed king of hedonism, sin, and arrogance to the truth, a sign for all those who believe and have understanding, an affirmation of his promise that he guides whom he will, despite the opposition of his disbelievers. Mashallah, this has inspired me to become a better Muslim. If someone like Andrew, who experienced all the pleasures of the modern world, has seen the light, then I don't have any excuse to keep sinning. This is the right attitude. I am happy for brother Tate, and inshallah, we will all be better people together. So on a separate post, I read some comments that are against Andrew Tate, not because he's converted to Islam, but more so because his views aren't conservative enough for some Muslim people. So we follow only Sharia and Sharia. Andrew Tate basically says it's okay for men to have multiple partners and go to bars before marriage, but women must stay virgins. I warn against him. I think he is just gaining Muslim audience to later criticize us like Jordan Peterson. Stay away from this idiot. I know there are many Muslim feminists out there, but we cannot correct wrong by doing wrong. We must stick to Sharia and any other ideology, be it feminism, communism, narcissism, LGBT, capitalism, has no place in Islam. Stay away from people like Andrew Tate. And then thankfully, I don't know if something changed, but when he was arrested, a lot of people were turning against him. So in the subreddit, it said, what is wrong with people in this sub defending him? He's the last thing I want to be associated with Islam. He can be a Muslim, but his actions, his speeches in no way reflect our values and we shouldn't defend him. People in here really think that just because he converted, it automatically nullifies his past actions and crimes. How are they so naive? What is wrong with people? Seriously, he may be Muslim now, which is between him and Allah, but we don't want this man to be associated with Islam publicly because it will only further damage the reputation of the religion. I was reading some articles from like Muslim writers and journalists, and what was interesting is a lot of them said that sometimes when someone converts to Islam and is famous, a lot of like Muslim men like it because it makes the faith look good in some way. But there you see just like more moderate Muslims saying like, have you forgotten all the terrible things he said and done? And then more conservative Muslims saying, have you heard all the stuff he said about women and sex and stuff like that? That completely goes against Sharia law. So it is an interesting thing, and of course shows you that Islam, Muslims, they're not a monolith of people. They come from loads of different countries around the world, and they have a lot of different beliefs. And even if they are like socially conservative, this social conservatism also means they don't accept people like Andrew Tate who have more like liberal or degenerate views on things like sex. So just on this a bit more, I was reading a lot of articles today about this stuff and why people in the Muslim world have embraced Andrew Tate. And I want to start with this one in New Lines magazine by Rasha al-Akidi. So Tate's effects on young Muslim men is worth noting, particularly because a different section of the West Manosphere has appealed to various sectors of the Muslim world. In a Canadian high school, an Islamic studies teacher was shocked when one of her 10th grade male students argued that women belonged in the kitchen. The teacher, who wears a niqab, a conservative Muslim face cover that reveals only the eyes, had not heard this before from her students. Upon inquiring, she learned that the student was inspired by Andrew Tate. I approached some of Tate's most avid Muslim defenders online. They range in age from 21 to 30 and spoke anonymously. So one person saying, look, we know it's not ideal and what he has done in the past is sinful, but he is a new convert and will learn in time. I struggled to understand the cognitive dissonance before me. While it is true that from a religious perspective, new Muslims must be welcomed, repenting for one's sins is also a vital part of converting to Islam, and Tate has never once indicated any desire to repent. Defending Tate as a recent convert goes beyond typical double standards. The same men who chastise Muslims like Mo Salah for decorating a Christmas tree in his home somehow have no vocal objections to another Muslim man who still openly describes himself as a pimp. So one of the overlapping ideas between Tate's Muslim supporters and the far-right movements in the West is how they define depravity. The threat is not non-marital sex and adultery, nor is overindulgence in earthly pleasures. Rather, the threat is the new wave of feminism and liberalism that influences the kind of women who these groups would rather keep in traditional gender roles in order to uphold the traditional patriarchal order, which permits a man to indulge in whatever pleasure he desires, while expecting chastity and submission from the women in their direct circles. After Tate's arrest, I reached out to Muslim men who I previously spoke to for comment, and only one agreed to speak to me saying, it's all lies, they are coming after him because he is now a Muslim, because he's exposing the Matrix. A 23-year-old told me, the red pill wave will continue no matter what they do. I think that article obviously says something I've been saying, is that people are drawn to Andrew Tate in the Muslim world because he is pro-patriarchy and anti-woke. When I did that video on Jordan Peterson, another writer interviewed people in Lebanon and asked them why they like Jordan Peterson, because there was like this bookstore that was always sold out of his books, and they would say similar things against like feminism, liberalism, like wokeism, and that is where he's finding his audience no matter where it is, despite the fact these people often say bad things about Islam in the past, like Andrew Tate, Sneako, and Jordan Peterson. They find the audience because I guess religious conservatism and conservatism is the same throughout the world, and when you have parts of the world which are often more socially conservative for various different reasons, that is how they can grow their audience there. And like I said earlier, I think it's dangerous to paint all Muslims as a monolith. It's obviously not true to start with, but it obviously leads to harmful stereotypes and demonizing like a whole group of people who might not have the same views on stuff. So on that note, I wanted to talk about people in the Muslim communities throughout the world who are trying to stand up to how Andrew Tate is influencing the Muslim communities. So a CNN article just had an interview with someone in the UK. So Ayo Khalil, 26, is an NHS doctor and community worker who is trying to bridge the gap between Tate's fans and those who are openly critical of his platform. Khalil believes Tate's rhetoric is creating a gross misrepresentation of Islam because he speaks brazenly about violence towards women, while his fans have idolized him as a model Muslim male. I feel like Muslims have become very obsessed with public figures representing Islam, regardless of what they've said and done. It's such a damaging and uncritical approach. Khalil says he converted to Islam and fell in love with the faith because social justice and spirituality, discipline and submission were embedded in it. Khalil ran an online workshop in January in order to start a critical dialogue about Andrew Tate, violence and Muslim masculinity, after seeing the dismissive way members of his community addressed Andrew Tate's popularity. Men in this case have to take individual responsibility to really push back against the way other men behave towards women. He believes that more imams, community leaders, and teachers need to speak out against Tate and help young Muslim men reevaluate how masculinity is defined within the parameters of the faith, including being in touch with your emotions and showing kindness. So in another article by Yusra Samir, why this Muslim is pushing back against Andrew Tate, she wrote a good article just talking about like going against what he's saying, but also outlines how a lot of people in the Muslim world are like standing up against this kind of rhetoric. Prominent Muslim intellectuals in the West, such as author Khalid Baidoun and Shabana Mir, professor at Chicago's American Islamic College, have also publicly expressed worries about the rise of red pill culture. Bilal Ware, professor of history at the University of California in Santa Barbara, posted a series of Instagram posts criticizing Dawa influencers who have been hosting Tate on their podcasts and YouTube videos, giving platforms to unrepentant misogynists. Whether converts or lifelong believers sends a clear message, abusers welcome. He also took a stance against toxic masculinity by saying, the Muslim manosphere has become a preserve for emasculated, intimidated men to play tough by bullying women. This is not Islam. Joseph Lombard, an associate professor of Quran studies at the Hamad bin Khalifa University in Doha, has been tweeting to challenge the suggestion that by converting to Islam, Tate's reputation is fully rehabilitated. Too many Muslim men are seeking to give him a pass, claiming he has a good opinion. Islam wipes away all sins. These are indeed important Islamic principles that apply in the vast majority of cases, but not when they are employed to excuse violent misogyny, grifting, and an all manner of wickedness, corruption, which Andrew Tate's social media platforms continue to promote. So finally, the author also writes this, which I've been saying, so I am both wary and skeptical of Andrew Tate's conversion because I question what it was that attracted him to my faith. Consider his earlier videos where he reacted to Will Smith's Red Table Talk with Jada Pinkett Smith regarding her infidelity by saying that watching the clip had made him want to convert to Islam because in a Muslim country she would have been executed. I suspect that it is a white Islamophobic and Orientalist misperceptions of Islam as being a religion that permits violence towards women that are the basis for Tate's conversion. And that's what I was saying at the start, that Andrew Tate and Sneako's view of Islam isn't one that's totally true, because they're cherry picking certain elements they like. For example, if you do live in a fundamentalist Muslim country, somewhere more like Saudi Arabia, and maybe like other poorer countries like Afghanistan or whatever, there might be instances where you could get your cheating wife like the death penalty or something like that. But at the same time, you're not living in a society that permits your promiscuous lifestyle where you don't actually want to be married. Like, I know Cristiano Ronaldo has moved to Saudi Arabia and he has his partner. But if you actually are born in these countries, you can't live a life like Ronaldo or Andrew Tate, and because you have to follow the laws which are influenced by Islamic fundamentalism. But because Andrew Tate will never have to deal with that, it will never have to live following the laws of a conservative Muslim country, he can just say like, I like that, I like that, I like that, and just ignore the parts that come with that. So although he often likes the fundamentalist aspects of Islam, he wouldn't like most of it, but to him it doesn't matter. He can just say that to justify why he's converting and convince people like, oh yeah, this is why I'm converted to Islam. But at least with some Muslims who even are like more stricter conservative Muslims, they don't buy it because they're like, he's just saying that because he doesn't actually want to follow Sharia law. And with more moderate Muslims, they just find him disgusting because he is really, really extreme in his rhetoric towards women. So obviously I'm not a Muslim, I'm an atheist. So when people in this are saying like, oh, how could Andrew Tate be drawn to Islam? How could Andrew Tate even want to be a Muslim? I kind of reject that, and I've outlined why it makes no sense that he wants to be a conservative Muslim. I'm an atheist who recognizes that, yeah, there are loads of violent strains of Islam, there are loads of fundamentalist strains of Islam that exist in massive numbers throughout the world today, so it's not unthinkable someone who hates women would be attracted to certain forms of Islam, because there are a lot of people in Islam who do subscribe to a similar ideology. But actually sometimes it's even more extreme, like how women are treated in Afghanistan right now and have to wear like the niqab and it's forced upon them. There are more extreme forms of that which do exist in countries with absolutely huge populations. So I'm not going to outright say I can't believe that someone who hates women would be attracted to like religion, because every Abrahamic religion has these elements. You have fundamentalist Christian elements from places like America, Russia to Africa. You have fundamentalist Jewish communities that have terrible views towards women. And of course, you have fundamentalist Muslim communities which also have terrible views towards women. I think there's a whole host of reasons that Andrew Tate is choosing Islam, but central to it is he has a very Orientalist view, a non-nuanced view of Islam, where he just takes the worst of it and thinks he can get away with still having his lifestyle and all Muslims will accept him. But like one of those articles said, they're saying like, they're just accepting Andrew Tate because he's famous and now he's a famous Muslim, rather than critically thinking about like, is this guy actually a Muslim? Does this guy seem to subscribe to any form of Islam? Like, is he a liberal Muslim? No. Is he a proper Sharia believing conservative Muslim? No. And although religion is fundamentally hypocritical, it doesn't seem like he fits in with any real definition of what a Muslim is. So it just seems like Sneako and Andrew Tate have this perception of Islam which they think they can exploit to stay relevant. So anyway, that is it for the video. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments, and if you made it this far, thank you for watching.